It is legendary landscape in New Hampshire, dotted with what looks like giant golf balls. We're on a mission to take you inside these spheres and into the restricted area of the New Boston Space Force Station.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have your seat.
The 23rd Space Operations Squadron welcomes us behind what's usually closed doors. We're starting at the top with a briefing from the commander, Lieutenant Colonel David Zessinger.
Took command in July of 2021 when we renamed the installation from an Air Force station to a Space Force station, and kind of a full circle of service to the country. So it's a real big privilege to be here.
The Lieutenant Colonel moved from the Air Force to the Space Force, arriving in New Hampshire from the Pentagon.
The Space Force is under the Department of the Air Force, so it's similar to how the Navy and the Marines are separate but equal services under the Department of the Navy. It's the same exact thing for the Space Force.
Don't be alarmed by what you're about to hear. We step through pressure-locked doors leading inside one of those golf ball structures. This is officially called a radome, a combination of radar and dome. Look up and you'll see the enormous antenna, one of many on this base communicating with satellites critical to modern life. GPS, cell phones, banking, even smart weapons.
Many other nations can reach out in space and touch us, and we need to pay attention. And we need to be able to preserve and defend our assets.
There's a team of 120 in New Boston, 5 uniformed Space Force Guardians. The rest, government contracted personnel. Their mission, allow access to more than 200 satellites as they pass over the Atlantic area of the globe.
What these antennas do for the satellites that we support and the missions that they support, extremely important.
They work with a network of other locations in Cape Canaveral, England, Ascension Island in the Southern Hemisphere, and Greenland, which they visited.
Greenland is basically a copy and paste of this installation, but just a lot colder and a lot less trees.
Communicating with installations on the other side of the planet, bouncing signals up and down and around the globe, called M-hopping.
You can beam up to a satellite, and then the satellite will come down to another ground station, and back to another satellite, and back to the intended target. That's called M-hopping because it makes an M, around the Earth.
If Space Operations in Colorado needs to talk to a satellite, New Boston, known by its call sign BOSS, will make that connection with an antenna.
Communication satellites, weather satellites, research and development, missile warning, always scanning, keeping us safe.
An example of one of the satellites we support day to day is the GPS constellation.
Master Sergeant Kyle Dooley says the 23rd Space Operations Squadron keeps you connected with your everyday life.
This is a unit patch, the 23 stops, the gatekeeper is what we call it. The gatekeeper is what we call it. And the space access is what we do. So we control access to space. So it's great to be a part of the team.
Major Joel Chalmers helped design the squadron emblem.
It definitely represents what our squadron is and what our squadron does. In the middle is the antenna. We have a couple deltas in here to represent the Space Force, and then the 3 orbits.
This is the same roads that these people were using 300 years ago, and it's on a Space Force station.
The history runs deep on these 3,000 acres. Native stone tools were found on the land dating back more than 12,000 years. There are dozens of archaeological sites, more than 70 colonial foundations, a stop on the Underground Railroad.
It's amazing that slaves would come here on their journey to freedom.
Yeah, we have several documented cases of slaves being brought here.
All preserved on this federal property because public access is not permitted.
It's a closed installation. We have to maintain a pretty high level of security based on the important mission that we do for the Space Force.
The Air Force has been conducting space missions for decades.
In 1959, that's when the space mission started here at New Boston. The Corona program was our first intelligence program. We would have satellites up in space that would take pictures of the Soviet Union.
Now, like other countries, the U.S. has a dedicated Space Force with about 6,600 active duty Guardians around the globe. New Hampshire's home to more than $1 billion worth of assets and on the duty around the clock here in New Boston, paying tribute to the past and looking to the future.